these again. Okay, joining us on the broadcast today is Martyn Sibley. Martyn's going to be talking to us about blogging, and in particular how to identify the right market so that you can get an income from blogging. So Martyn, welcome. It's lovely to talk to you properly.
Thanks for having me, Anne.
I have to say that Martyn is out in Spain, where he's decamped to get away from the British weather. So, Martyn, just tell us a little bit about your background, first of all, for people who don't already know you.
Sure. So, I guess, essentially a disability blogger, and a big part of that is I do have a disability myself. And although up to sort of after university, I wasn't very much involved in the disability sphere or the blogging world. I worked for the disability charity Scope in fundraising and sort of diversity training for about 6 years. And then during the last couple of years at Scope, my blog picked up enough that I was able to leave the big city and the big lights of London and employment to go off and travel the world and take my blog and my self-employed world to new places.
Great. I must admit, the reason I asked you to come on and do the interview with me was because of the wider experience that you have of marketing, not particularly because you're in a niche, but because you're sorry about this. Someone's trying to call me on Skype, but because your marketing experience really goes much broader than that, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, at uni, I did a master's in marketing, so that was a good grounding in the theory of marketing, and then both in fundraising for Scope and then running my own business. I think the different kind of trial and errors I've been through would be applicable to anyone else blogging or generally looking to spread a message, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so the other person that we've got with us today is Ed Goodman from the Cambridge Business Lounge. Ed's going to have to duck out quite soon, but we're hoping that he'll get a few questions in before he goes. So, Martyn, tell us about this whole thing of earning an income. You'd already built up an audience, and then discovered that you weren't able to market to them in the way that you thought, so you had to rethink the whole strategy. Just talk us through that.
Sure. I think when I'd gone on some courses at Scope about kind of new media and social media in whatever context it would be applied to, it just seemed that if you told the story in a compelling enough way and you built up a community around that using lots of different channels and tools, that there would always be a way that you could create a monetary income from that. So I wasn't too concerned early on with the how. It was just keep telling the story, in this instance, of my personal experiences of being disabled, and to try and get the blog out there in front of as many people that would be interested and find it useful as possible. And when I left Scope, I had a couple of contracts lined up with Scope and with Hackney Council, who kind of commissioned me to run webinars. And I think that fitted in with the broad plan I originally had, which was that if you have the great articles in the community, you can essentially upsell digital products of your knowledge, and you can also offer kind of coaching and mentoring in terms of your consultancy time. But as I rolled that out more and more directly to the disabled people that followed me, it seemed that they weren't willing or able to actually, to sort of pay for the things that I was offering. Now, I'm sort of keen to revisit it 3 years later at some stage, but essentially that traditional model didn't work. It did fail. So I had to really look for other models to try and fund myself.
Okay, and I think I mentioned to you before that this is a conversation that I've had several times, especially with people who are in the therapy world. So, people who are working in massage and alternative therapies, working with folk who are ill or have some kind of, maybe they've had cancer or depression or something like that, and they feel that this sort of almost a sense of guilt of trying to charge people for those services. And And so it really is more about choosing the market for the people who are not only willing to pay but able to pay. Is that kind of reflecting what you went through?
Yeah, no, I think traditionally the charity model is that one half or a part of the organisation is delivering frontline services, and different people package up the need and the intervention and the outcomes of those social good projects to bring money into the organisation. And I think charities are moving more towards a social enterprise model, that there isn't the same government subsidies and sort of trust grants that can keep those types of projects afloat. So, in a sense, I'm probably maybe a little bit early to the party when I started trying to package up, myself as a social business. But I think going forward, that is the way that charities are going to have to go. And it is about feeling confident of the value as an organisation or as a person that you are offering the people that you're serving. And then it's, trying to find the appropriate and correct way for everyone concerned to keep that financially sustainable, really.
Yeah. So the traditional model that you talked about would be for people to get, as you said, build an audience and then get someone to either put adverts on your sites that are attractive to that audience, or to sponsor content,
Yeah.
again, to get the message out to the audience that you've built. So how have you tipped that now? How are you looking at it in a different way?
I think probably in the end, I'm looking at who the audience is, and I think we sort of discussed before that the article I'd written about this, I found there were two audiences. So whilst there are lots of disabled people and their families that benefit from what I talk about, there's also a lot of, I guess, kind of stakeholders within the disability sector, from government or from media or from charities or from companies that are looking to sell products and services to disabled people. So I think in that kind of research exercise that there were kind of two broad segments to my audience. And if the first, the direct kind of recipient and beneficiary almost of what I do wasn't willing or able to sort of pay for that, but the other part of the audience definitely did have budget and were able to either sponsor, give adverts, or even I have wrapped myself up as a consultant to create similar content and marketing tools under their own brand. So there's maybe kind of three broad models. One is the sell direct, the other one is still create the content and have someone else sponsor or advertise on your platform, and the third one would be to use your knowledge and expertise within that community, but on behalf of another brand or organisation. And I think if you can do a bit of all three, you're spreading risk and you're opening up different revenue channels, which can only be a good thing as a business person.
I think that's really useful. Those three different models, I think, could really be used by anybody, couldn't they? Whatever type of business they're in and whatever topics they want to blog on.
Yeah, absolutely. And some might find one works better, and others might find all three are equally good. And I'm really in a new phase of my business. That it's 3 years in July since I left employment to go self-employed. So I think the fact I've survived and not gone into any debt or borrowed has been a massive achievement, because there's been some pretty dark days wondering where this is all going and if I'd have to almost sort of go back to the old way. But I think the realization is that you can, take everything forward positively, and everything has had a good reason. All the networking and all the writing and all the videos, and it all still helps where you are now. And then if you can be a bit kind of clever in capturing that history and just double check you're on the right avenue for yourself and for your business, then it can only go from strength to strength.
Yeah, I think that is just so true for almost every new business, isn't it? People get to the point where they think, is this ever going to work? And should I be looking for a job instead?
Yeah.
going back into employment. So well done for you for sticking it out, and also congratulations on your engagement. By the way, you've got a lot of other things to work for now, haven't you?
Yes, yeah, nothing like a wedding and a honeymoon and a family in the future to give you a kick up the bum, but in an absolutely lovely way.
That's great. Martyn, before we let you go, talk us through one of the other things that I was so inspired to read from you, where you were looking at creativity and the best ways to be your creative self.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I set out to kind of embark upon all of this, money was always going to be necessary, and a level of it has an importance for survival. But it was about being, I guess, creatively autonomous and being able to do social kind of good, social change directly. And I think another reflection I sort of came to was that in being so worried and stressed about where the next sort of paycheck was coming from, it just drained me of energy and creativity and even kind of that connection with my audience. And although there will always be these financial worries, in trying to really just shed that and think purely about what the blog is for, what I stand for, what I'm trying to achieve, I realized there was a lot more I wanted to write about and record about on video and create micro campaign projects. So the creativity kind of kicked back into me and the motivation and the inspiration kicked back into me. And ironically, I've suddenly picked up more work as well. So it seemed a bit of a downward spiral and a catch-22. And eventually pulling myself out of that is an upward spiral, I hope, going forward.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? Once you start putting yourself out there and shaking a few trees, it's extraordinary what happens and the opportunities that come up.
Yeah, and I think mindset underpins it all. If you're, looking to sell directly to your audience or sponsor the content to your audience or become maybe a consultant to another brand, if there's an air of desperation, it's just not good for anyone. But if you're on the front foot, full of ideas and creativity, it's very magnetic, and people want to be involved in that.
Great. So, have you any plans to come back to the UK anytime soon?
Well, I'm back in July, so we're in this current apartment till the end of June, and then I've got various filming I'm doing on accessible tourism. So I'm going to be presenting on videos around national parks in England, which will be quite exciting. And then shortly after, we're coming back to drive through Italy and up to Poland, where Kasia's family are. So I'll be back in August for longer, but there's a 2-week layover in July.
Fantastic. Well, I hope we're able to catch up with you soon. And the next time that you're in Cambridge, you'll come and visit us at the Inspired Group. That would be wonderful.
That would be a pleasure.
Thanks very much for joining us, Martyn. We're going to put this on YouTube so that everybody can share in it. And hopefully, if they have some questions, they'll be able to leave it in the comments and you can come back to them and get in a conversation with people.
Brilliant. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Martyn. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.